It's a day that is still very sacred to those who practice witchcraft.
If you're among the many Americans who think Halloween is a harmless festival of fun and games, perhaps you'd better think again.
Actually, at Halloween, we are honoring a god, and he is the Aryan Lord of Death. And this is significant. This is a significant feast day for not only witches, Wiccan witches, but also it is a significant feast day for Satanists.
Former witch Kathleen Atchison points out that Aryanism was once dear to the heart of the occultist Adolf Hitler. But there's something even more alarming about Halloween night that makes it so special for occultists.
It is that time of year where the veils between the worlds is most transparent.
The spells, the incantations, the magic circles, the expectations of that contact for the entities and the demons to do the bidding of the humans, the witches, the Satanists, the call upon them. It's the night where they merge. That's what is meant by the veil is transparent.
Atchison and Paula Gauthier were once both practitioners of Wiccan witchcraft. Very simply put, Wiccans believe they are practicing white magic. That is, magic which is helpful, healing, and harmful to none. Wiccans are adamant that they are not satanic and would never think of themselves as consorting with demons. But both Atchison and Gauthier, who advanced quickly to deeper levels of what's commonly called the craft, say they were taught to conjure and command spiritual entities, which later revealed themselves to be evil and dangerous.
I had crossed that line, and the door had opened into the unseen, and the manifestations began, and they were specific, and they were diabolical in nature. They were horrific and frightening.
Atchison says before long she was literally surrounded by demons for weeks, which pressured her into committing suicide. She says were it not for the intervention of Jesus Christ himself and her conversion to Christianity, she would have succumbed to those suggestions of suicide. Gauthier says it was her conversion to Christianity as well, which saved her from going mad.
It seems that what we have here is a growing 20th century phenomenon, a fascination with a mystical age.
David Goss is an historian and the museum director of the House of Seven Gables in Salem, Massachusetts. Goss, who's been studying the history of Salem for almost 2 decades, says Halloween's not just for kids anymore.
It's celebrated more by adults, almost, than children. Here in the neo-pagan town of Salem, there is a pagan celebration that takes place amongst the Wiccans, which is not the modern-day type of Halloween celebration. It's a religious festival.
Today, it is estimated that as many as 3,000 neo-pagans live in Salem, making up roughly 10% of the town's population. Estimates of the number of neo-pagans nationwide range anywhere from 100,000 to 250,000. Paula Gauthier says Salem has become a regional training area for these practitioners nationwide.
Quite a lot of people have come into this regional area to learn witchcraft and then moved out and moved onwards to other parts of the country.
Modern witchcraft has now grown so popular in parts of Wisconsin, Milwaukee Magazine devoted its October cover story to its growing phenomenon. The magazine notes that many modern women are attracted to witchcraft because of its emphasis on female deities, making it a religion often appealing to feminists. But as Wicca's popularity grows, its practitioners appear to be more preoccupied with public image than politics.
They are very strong here. They're not only very populist, they're also very vocal. They watch very carefully how they are depicted not only on the streets, but in the media.
Salem witch Lori Cabot declined an on-camera interview with CBN News because she says she and her witches will not participate in programming which airs any view critical of witchcraft. But Cabot and the Witches Anti-Defamation League, headquartered in her Salem home, are not only concerned with what the media says about them.
In Salem today, it is very politically incorrect to openly criticize the practices of neo-pagan Wiccan witches.
In Salem, if you're anti-witch, you're anti-American almost. It's gotten to that point.
Wiccans say they have the right to exercise their freedom of religious expression and that criticism of their ways amounts to censorship and religious intolerance. But ironically, it is in Salem, home of the infamous witch hunts of 1692, where witches today are enjoying the most freedom, tolerance, and even public promotion. The witch is the official symbol of Salem, appearing on just about everything private and public. Meanwhile, the mainstreaming of witchcraft and other forms of paganism marches on, partly through the growing popularity of Halloween. In Salem, this year's celebration of Samhain is especially sacred to the witches because 1992 marks the 300th anniversary of the Salem witch trials. Today's witches are capitalizing on the event to point out the evils of Bible-based Christian criticism of their religion and way of life. Historian David Goss acknowledges the Puritans were wrong in their overzealous persecution of suspected witches in Salem in the late 1600s. But Goss notes that the Puritans were in pursuit of witches who'd made actual pacts with the devil, and according to original documents from the trials, they did indeed discover some satanic witches in their midst. Wiccans today claim that witches arrived on America's shores with the earliest settlers from England, disguising themselves as Puritans and Pilgrims. Satanists were also rumored to be among them. Goss says that's highly plausible because witches were undergoing far greater persecutions in England than they would ever experience in Salem. But both Atchison and Gauthier fear that the pendulum of tolerance may be swinging too far in the other direction in America today.
Halloween's becoming a real American holiday, you know, and people have become anesthetized almost to the dangers of it.
It will insidiously, very insidiously, take over our culture, our communities, our households, and ultimately we may have something much worse than Hitler controlling us.
You know, Ben, that last statement, Hitler was clearly involved in the occult. There's a book on the Nazis and the occult that I found extraordinarily interesting and used some background for the New World Order. But those people in these dictatorial societies have almost invariably been tied into some kind of occult practice. Egyptian occult, Babylonian occult, you know, Indian occult from East India, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Pat, before I came to know the Lord, you started to hang out with people to climb up the social ladder. Mm-hmm. And when you talk to people who are, quote, hip, sophisticated, well-educated, when the notions of things like satanic power and this sort of thing comes up, it's kind of poo-pooed and ho-ho, you know, like we're too hip for anything like that. Get off of it. Yeah. You know? And then when they do find out it's real, it's really a very tasty little morsel that leads them on to more because it stimulates the prurient interest they have. But before long, they find themselves trapped into it. And by the time they find out the truth, it's almost too late.
Pick up one of those psychic analysis books or, you know, psychics predict the future kind of thing, and there is an incredible pull. There's a spiritual pull that comes out of those, and it would obviously, if somebody's not a Christian, not deeply in the Lord, it's fascinating because this stuff promises power, and these people want power to manipulate people. They want power over members of the opposite sex. They want power over money. They want power politically, this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So why not make a pact with the devil to get it? I mean, you know, big deal. I'm going to get what I want. I know one man who used to go to these table tapping places, and he said it was amazing. He started getting all this money. He was buying property that these demons were telling him what to buy and what not to buy. But what they do, they entrap people, they enslave them, and then, you know, they deliver the blow.
Exactly. Plus, you got all these little things around town where you can go see Sister So-and-so, you know, for love potions and all that kind of stuff. People say, well, that's real stuff.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is something to be afraid of, and it might be interesting to note, Ben, that this thing has political implications. I mean, there's been a great deal of laughter about the quotation of some of the statements of the militant feminists, but there is a group of National Organization of Women in Minneapolis who publishes a newspaper, and one of the major articles, it showed a pregnant woman being crucified on a cross. You know, that's their feeling. And they said, we should explore some of the goddess religions i.e. witchcraft, because witches, you see, are usually female. The warlock's the man. Witchcraft is a goddess-centered type of religion, such as Astarte in the Old Testament. You remember how many deities they had? Diana of the Ephesians, Minerva, etc. These were goddess figures, and so they're saying, let's go back to goddess figures. And everybody laughs at, you know, somebody who quotes them as, aren't you intolerant? But that's what they're saying. We should explore for the women's movement the return to these goddess forms as opposed to a patriarchal religion where you have God the Father. That's what they're saying.
And the tragedy is, Pat, this is nothing new.
Oh, no.
All this stuff, is the Bible talks about it. It happened centuries ago. It's returned to the old ways.